Hello everyone, how you going? Welcome to Aussie Inventions you might not know about, just things that have hopefully changed the world for the better, and so let's just see how much of an impact Australia has had.
If you ask the average Australian to name a great Australian invention, they're most likely to say Vegemite or the Hills hoist.
That one, yes.
At a pinch, they might also mention the Victor lawnmower or the stump jump plough.
What is that?
But we Aussies are a creative and innovative lot, and have contributed a lot more to humanity than just gardening equipment. Here are 5 great Aussie inventions you might not have known about.
There we go. Michelle bearing. What is it going to be?
In 1905, Australian engineer Anthony Mitchell patented a new type of bearing.
Oh, Michelle. Oh no, it doesn't have the second E, does it? Anyway, Michelle, Mitchell, same.
In 1905, Australian engineer Anthony Mitchell patented a new type of bearing called a fluid film thrust bearing, or simply a Mitchell bearing. The Mitchell bearing had tilting pads lubricated with oil. As the load on the bearing varied, the pads would automatically pivot to the optimal angle for most efficient running.
What?
At the start of the 20th century, this bearing was revolutionary.
Wait, don't tell me he basically invented a clutch kind of system. Hang on, that's a hell of a thing. Is that inside a ship or something? Where is that? What are we looking at here? I mean, if we take it back to here, rotor shaft and collar, fluid film, thrust pad, there's a lot going on, so hopefully it explains what the Michelle bearing is.
At the start of the 20th century, this bearing was revolutionary, pun intended. It could sustain enormous thrust loads with minimal wear and without overheating, while being much more efficient and only 1/10 the size of the bearings it replaced. Within a decade, they had found almost universal application in large pumps, generators and ships. There was some reluctance by the British to adopt Mitchell bearings in their warships, until they discovered that the German Navy were using Mitchell bearings in their World War I U-boats.
I mean, look, like I said at the start of the video, I was hoping that it was going to be a positive thing. This might be a little bit negative in terms of war and warships and whatnot. I mean, it certainly isn't Mr. Mitchell's fault. He just went out and developed a bearing and it happened to get, or was able to be used in so many different circumstances, especially because he said it was 1/10 the size and able to sustain more wear. Like, that is very, very impressive. It certainly makes sense it would find its way or find its home inside ships, you know, just mega engines, mega bearings, and you certainly don't want to be replacing that every month or however long.
Which gave the U-boats a range and speed that surprised the Royal Navy, and made the U-boats a much more effective weapon.
There we go. I mean, like I said, not positive or negative, just a machine that did its job well, I guess. And I always wonder with inventions just what starts it in the first place. You know, was he, I guess he said he was an engineer, didn't he?
In 1905, Australian engineer Anthony Mitchell patented a new type of bearing.
Yeah, you just said Australian engineer, and so I don't know what his background was or how he just suddenly needed to make his Mitchell bearing, his Michelle bearing, whatever you want to call it. And especially considering that he went all the way through with getting a patent on it. I mean, it certainly makes sense. It's a brilliant invention and clearly everyone was wanting to use it. And so I certainly hope for his sake that he was correctly compensated for his incredible invention. But either way, I just want to know what actually sparked it in the first place. Was he working on ships? Was he working on farm equipment? Just what was it that just made him go, you know what, this is just not working?
As well as being efficient, the low wear of Mitchell bearings means they need little maintenance and are very reliable.
Right.
A Mitchell bearing installed at the Holtwood hydroelectric power plant in Pennsylvania in 1912, supporting 165 tons of turbine and 40 tons of water pressure, is still in operation today.
What? Why aren't these things just used everywhere? What was that, so 200 ton?
Plant in Pennsylvania in 1912, supporting 165 tons of turbine and 40 tons of water pressure.
Yeah, 200 tons plus its own weight and I guess 205 tons. That's insane, and it's 110 years old.
Is still in operation today.
Impressive.
That bearing has been estimated to have a maintenance-free life of over 1,000 years.
Wait, how? How do you make a bearing that can go for that long? I mean, I remember seeing a fluid layer, but what is that fluid made of that it doesn't even just wear itself away? What kind of grease? And man, I don't even know. I wonder if you can even make it anymore. It would just be illegal.
Mitchell bearings, for their strength, efficiency and reliability, are still used on all large ships, power plants, pumps and turbines today.
Well, geez, even though that invention wouldn't directly impact many people's lives on a daily basis, the kind of worldwide consequences of not having that thing, I mean, I guess something else would have been invented, but just generally the use case of that one bearing throughout all these different shipping lines, motors, pumps, like he said, is just incredible. As from what he described, just anything that is kind of a mega infrastructure project from shipping to electricity is just running on these bearings that are basically infinite lifespan. So that's very, very impressive. And like I said, I just want to know how he even designed it or where the inspiration came from. Anyway, moving on to froth flotation.
At the start of the 20th century, mining was a much more wasteful process than it is now. The extraction processes of the time meant that miners were only able to extract about 70% of lead and as little as 50% of silver from their ores.
What?
Even large amounts of gold wound up in useless tailings piles.
Wow.
At mine sites around the world, there were huge piles of waste material containing vast quantities of valuable metal that no one could extract.
Oh.
In 1901, Charles Potter, a brewer from Melbourne, after seeing how bubbles in beer lifted the beer sediments to the surface of the vat, realised the same process could be used to separate valuable minerals from crushed rock.
Wait, hang on a second. How do you just realise that? There's a bit of a difference between bubbles floating and being able to lift gold out of rock. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on this subject, but I feel like one is gas trapped inside liquid and the other one is literally just solid rock. How is that ever going to work? Do you just have to kind of high pressurise steam it? I hope he explains it.
After testing the process with a sample of ore, he patented the technique.
Damn.
2 years later, a plant using the flotation process to extract zinc was built in New South Wales. The flotation process has been refined and improved by many individuals and companies over the past century.
Wow.
And more than 99% of a metal can be extracted from its ore.
Oh, just by using that technique, that's insane, because they were getting as low as 50 or maybe even lower for some things, and now they're getting, let's just call it 100%, so that's a 100% increase in what they were getting before, and that is now 2 in a row that have been in the early 1900s. That one was 1901, the other one was 1916, no, what was it?
In 1905...
1905, and so it was even earlier. Okay, well then, yeah, 1905, 1901, we just had a lot of stuff going on in Australia.
And more than 99% of a metal can be extracted from its ore.
Crazy.
Froth flotation has been described as one of the most significant advances in metallurgy in the last 1,000 years.
Oh.
I'll drink to that.
Wow, one of the most significant, if not the most significant things in metallurgy, is that what he called it? And it probably can't go too much further back because you just start actually getting to the original designs and extraction of metal in the first place. And for it to all come just from a brewer in 1901 in Melbourne, that's pretty impressive that the world standard is now been just, I mean, it's been refined like you said, but it all just started with this one invention, technique, whatever you want to call it, just way about doing it, just to literally 100% your outcome. Honestly, the only other way I can see a percentage gain like that happening again is if we or when we start mining asteroids, because they just have so mineral rich in comparison to Earth. And so yeah, I guess it's just going to be another 500 years, 1,000 years, a millennia if you want to call it that, before we get anywhere near another percentage jump like that. Atomic absorption spectroscope, okay.
In 1952, a group of chemists at the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, or CSIRO, led by Sir Alan Walsh, developed the atomic absorption spectroscope, a device able to detect minute amounts of different elements in materials ranging from soil to blood to wine.
Wow.
The spectroscope revolutionised chemical analysis and is now used throughout the world in laboratories, hospitals and factories.
Absolutely, that thing would just be used everywhere. I can only assume that it would be testing for parts per million of whatever you need, but the fact that it has such a range, so like, no, this is the blood one and this is the water one, the fact that it's just basically one machine that I can imagine has to be tweaked a little bit, but it can still just measure any chemical content with anything.
Atomic absorption spectroscopy works by vaporizing a small amount of the material to be studied and shining a light through the vapor. The atoms in the vapor absorb specific colors of the light, leaving a fingerprint of their presence.
Wow.
This gives a very accurate indication of what atoms are present and in what amounts.
That's incredible.
Apart from being an extremely valuable tool for analytical chemistry, the spectroscope kick-started Australia's scientific instrument industry, now worth more than $1 billion annually.
Well, $1 billion is nothing to be snuffed at, but I honestly don't think it's as impressive as this entire invention. How do you come up with the idea that you're going to shine whatever wavelength, whatever, I can only imagine, very specific wavelength through vaporized contents, just so then you can determine the exact atomic makeup of a molecule or element? I mean, then I'm not sure how much it actually gets broken down, so they have to piece the puzzle back together with all the building blocks they now vaporized, or maybe it just tells them, yep, this is sulfur right here. Yes, the classic Polymer Banknotes.
Another technology developed at CSIRO is used around the world every day, the polymer banknote. Plastic banknotes are much more difficult to forge and are able to easily incorporate security features such as clear windows, holograms, special inks and multi-layer.
Oh, look at that. Oh, wait, is that the Canadian one? Was it ever in focus? No, it was never in focus, but that's what the guy in the Canadian currency video was trying to show me, and I went, I can't see what I'm looking at. It's meant to be this or that, but then that one is super clear. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I'm going to assume that it is Canadian, considering it's got this big window. It almost looks like it's got the semicircles at the end, and it's purple, which which is kind of a dead giveaway if it is actually Canadian, or maybe I'm just getting tricked and it's not that actual color. But look at that, yeah, $10. That is incredible that they can even do that. And that is one thing that I don't know that Australian banknotes have, but hey, we invented it in the first place. So, you know, we got to take credit where we can.
They last much longer than paper notes and so are cheaper to produce and have less of an impact on the environment. They last longer because they don't tear as easily and don't fall apart if they get wet. Tricks like this lost their novelty to Aussies decades ago.
Wait, what? Oh, I didn't even realize what was going on here. I was going, are they trying to cool it down or wet it or what's going on? But no, they're showing that it doesn't just break and deteriorate so that it can get wet.
More than 20 countries, including Brunei, Thailand, Britain and Canada, now use Australian-developed polymer banknotes.
Yep. Well, there's been plenty of comments just saying, oh, you know what, Canada just actually invented, or Canada just now prints Australian money. And sure, maybe they do, but they certainly didn't invent it. And that's the main one. It's the people that invented it, the people that came up with the technology in the first place. And here we go. Front and center, Australia made it. There's no arguing about it. Yes, the Cochlea Implant.
Hearing aids improve the lives of millions of people every year, but they are essentially amplifiers, replaying the sounds they pick up at a higher volume, and so they can't help the profoundly deaf. Beginning in the late 1960s, Professor Graham Clark began research into cochlear implants, installing the first prototype in the ear of a deaf man in 1978.
Wow.
Cochlear implants bypass the most delicate and so often damaged parts of the ear by transmitting the sounds they pick up as electrical signals directly to the nerves in the patient's inner ear.
Oh, wow. I don't think I ever knew that that's how they worked. I don't know. I think that I just thought that they were kind of a deeper probe that was going further in the ear and so it was more amplified in that regard. But no, it's actually going all the way into the cochlea. But then it makes perfect sense to just cut out the middleman if they're not working. You know, you're trying to go from audio signals, pressure waves into electrical signals, but you have to use the ear, where this just, I guess, completely replaces the ear basically. I mean, as far as I'm aware and as far as I can see here, I can only imagine it doesn't help people that have degenerative nerve tissue or anything like that. But either way, it's an incredible kind of extra step above just a hearing aid. Like I said, the hearing aid is just an amplifier. Now they have Bluetooth and all these extra things, but this one is just a full step above that, where you're basically becoming a cyborg, I guess.
Since 1978, many thousands of people around the world have benefited from the implant.
Millions, surely.
Australian researchers continue to improve the device and develop new technologies for hearing loss.
Awesome.
These 5 inventions are just the tip of the iceberg. Aussies invented super strong spun concrete pipes, tower cranes, the deceptively orange black box flight recorder,
Wait,
extended wear contact lenses, the pacemaker, and have made major contributions to IVF and ultrasound.
Wow, I had no idea about most of those things. I think the only one that I'd really heard of was a black box, which, like I said, is kind of deceptively orange. And I had no idea about the concrete pipes and tower cranes. I never would have guessed. I guess I would have said it was either probably German or USA that invented it. Contact lenses, I had no idea. The pacemaker does ring a bell, but if you asked me about it, I probably wouldn't have said Australia. And then obviously on the other end of the spectrum, compared to tower cranes and concrete pipes, you just have babies and IVF. Like, man, it's just such a range.
I'll leave you with a bonus invention.
There we go.
Wi-Fi.
I was wondering if this was going to come
Sort
up.
of.
Oh.
Where would we be without Wi-Fi? Probably not sitting on the couch watching this video right now. While Wi-Fi often tops the list of Cyro's greatest inventions, Cyro did not actually invent wireless LANs.
Oh, no.
What they invented was a way to make Wi-Fi faster, more robust and more reliable.
Okay.
The Wi-Fi signals being transmitted around your house bounce off walls, furniture, you and even the cat. Your Wi-Fi enabled devices hear a cacophony of echoes which garble the data being transmitted. And those echoes are constantly changing as you and the cat move around the house.
Whoa.
To prevent this, the data transmission rate would have to be slowed down so that your device can pick the signal out of the noise.
Huh.
Cyro invented a way around this. Cyro scientists drew on their expertise in radio astronomy, a field of research where weak signals have to be separated from all sorts of noise.
Yes, of course. And I can only imagine that they are showing the Parkes dish right there, which was involved in the moon landing and all those kind of things, because we were the only one on this side of the Earth that had anything that was remotely capable of communicating with those guys on the dark side of Earth at the time. But I just want to take it back to this heat map. That is incredible. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it makes sense because it's just light bouncing off everything else. But when you see it like this, you can really understand how strength just so quickly degrades, and especially if you just go behind a wall, you know, it's just bouncing all around. Of course it can't go through most of the time.
By splitting the data transmission over a range of neighbouring frequencies and then using clever algorithms to quickly piece the information back together, Wi-Fi devices can transmit and receive much faster and more reliably. If you're watching this video using Wi-Fi, you have clever Aussie radio astronomers and engineers to thank for the convenience.
Well, there we go. I never knew that one in its full story either. I was just always told that, Australia invented Wi-Fi, but it wasn't entirely the case. I wonder who really invented it then. Maybe it was just a conglomeration of a whole bundle of people that just kept adding to it and making it better like those guys did. But no, the CSIRO is just a very, very impressive place, clearly, that have just gone through so many different elements. I mean, literally in this case, and even just at the start, how we mentioned the Vegemite and the whatever kind of random plow it is. I mean, the Victor lawnmower and the Hills hoist are just absolute staples, and I don't know if other countries have them, but they absolutely are just a staple of every single Australian backyard. If it's old enough, a lot of newer Australian backyards just don't include them because they're just immovable objects that take up way too much space in the middle of the bloody lawn. But no, there are just so many things, from bearings that are unbreakable to then just massively increasing mining efficiency just from beer. I mean, of course it was from beer. You could probably say the same thing about polymer banknotes in terms of someone just dropped their old paper currency and they went, oh, I just can't afford the beer. They went, no, what? We have a solution, just got to make them plastic. So it really just shows you how having more people in the mix of inventing things is just better for the world. It doesn't matter how big the country is, how new the country is, how old the country is. If you just have a couple of people that just have their mind just set on a particular goal, they see a problem, they can fix it, and they just either make a lot of money or they just make the world a better place. And so my hat just goes off to all those people, because even though I can only imagine it'd be quite frustrating at times where you just can't just work, please. I've just been working on it. It should work, and then it doesn't. At the other end of the spectrum, once you finally get that satisfaction of it working and it changes the world, there'd be no better feeling. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithm things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then make sure to check out just any other videos I've done. Also, make sure to come down here and just check out the original video down in the description below. Or hey, maybe even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.